I'm gonna be quiet for this part. I'll let the Japanese voices speak it out.
本当にこれでよかったのか。
私もあなたと同じ思いです。いいえ、私だけでなく、みんな同じはずです。ありがとう。
陛下
ずっと前から分かってた。私のせいで世界がどうなるか分かっていたの。でもどうしてもヒューマの体が欲しかった。
なぜです。
でもやっと本当に大切なものが何か分かったから、せめてこの国の王として一つくらい人のために。
しっかりしてください。
最後まで迷惑ばかりでごめんなさい。この国を頼みます。
陛下なしでどうやって。
あなたがいれば大丈夫。
違う、生きてください。私のために。アンガーテ。
ミルハウスとずっとあなたのこと好きだ。
Not Agarte. True Love's Kiss? Will that get her up?
.まだ種族の争いは続いている。
憎しみや悲しみはすぐに消えることはないだろう。だが私たちはそれを乗り越えなくてはならない。この国が生まれ変わるために。
Yes, a Rebirth.
人は新たな関係を築き上げなくてはならない。時間はかかるかもしれないができるはずだ。
はい、私もそう思います。分かり合える時が来ます。私たちがそうだったように。
私たちは同じ人です。災いに立ち向かうため、みんなが心を一つにしたあの時、世界中の人がそれを知ったはずです。
生まれ変わるか。どんな国なんだろうな。
少なくともこんなことをせずに済む世の中だと信じたいわね。
手を貸してくれないか。
やり方は違っても僕たちが目指すところは同じでしょ。
あんたの作る道を人は進む。その道しるべになれるような気がするんだ。俺たちなら。そう、俺たちだから。
It's actually a really good ending. I like it. Agarte dying is a little sad, and I kind of wish she didn't die, but like it does send a pretty powerful message of like basically the world going through a rebirth. I like it. That's actually pretty nice. We got credits now? Hey, there it is. Tales of Rebirth. We're done with the main story. That's everything. This game is pretty good. It's definitely one of the better Tales games. I really liked it. I'm really glad Life Bottle Productions translated it so English players can get on with it. Play this game if you love the Tales of series. It's just great. It's a great time. Not my favorite Tales game, but it was really good. Gameplay is really fun. It's got a bit of a learning curve to it, but the gameplay is really enjoyable. I really like the gameplay, even if it has some annoyances, like some classic Team Destiny stuff, like getting cornered is annoying sometimes. But I did end up really liking the gameplay. Like, I like the way fusion arts work. The only thing I don't like about the gameplay is I really just don't like that healing arts aren't in the game. They tried to be like, oh, HP regen's important, and Annie's like your healer with the circles, but like, you know, I prefer traditional healing from Tales of games, other Tales of games. Also, Mystic Arts, I think what they should have done is they could have had the cool combo Mystic Arts be kind of random, but that should not have been their only Mystic Arts. They should have had, like, solo Mystic Arts, at least one for, like, every character, is what they should have done. Why is Titri shirtless? I do like this, we're getting to see what everyone's up to in this, like, new world. I also do like how the characters... Not the characters, per se, but, like, how the people are just not suddenly friends, and they're like, oh, they got a long way to go, but Milhouse and Vague, that, like, last conversation they had with each other, of like, oh, we'll work together, and, we'll make sure the people accept each other. That's a really nice message. Again, Agarte dying is kind of sad, but it did kind of fit with the ending they were going for. But it was kind of sad, because I think Agarte got some pretty cool development. Nothing crazy, but pretty neat development. But yeah, gameplay's pretty fun. I just wish Mystic Arts worked differently. I wish everyone had their own Mystic Art as well as the combo ones, and I also just wish healing arts were in the game. Other than that, though, I really did enjoy the combat. Like, I found it really fun. I also like that the 4 stars, except Sala and Toma, didn't die. Walto and Militza have a chance to, like, atone for their crimes and sins or whatever, which is really good. I think the characters are pretty good. Not my favorite Tales of cast, but I did really like them. My favorite is probably Titri. Titri is my favorite character in the game. I really did like Milhouse. I thought Milhouse was a cool character, but it's kind of like the Ras conundrum from Tales of Eternia. I think more could have been done with Milhouse. I don't think Milhouse had enough appearances in the game to be as cool as he could have been. He was cool, don't get me wrong, but like he could have been better. I like Titri a lot. Titri's a really good character. He's my favorite, I think. Annie's pretty good. Eugene was also up there. I really liked Eugene and his storyline and how wise he was, and he was like the man of reason, the older one in the group. Annie was pretty good. Her development was neat. Mile was good. Mile was definitely like the comic relief and like the heart of the group. The heart and soul, whatever you call it. So Mile was pretty good. I didn't find him super annoying. Honestly, the game kind of let me down with Vague. Vague had a really good opening. Like, Vague interested me in the early parts of the game. But, Vague's whole character is that he just wants to protect Claire. And I know it's like a meme in, like, the Tales of Rebirth community, but, like, that really is mostly his character. It's solely dependent on Claire. But yeah, Vague interested me in the beginning, and then at the end of the game, they were like, oh... It reminded me when he and Titri had the fist fight, it was like, oh, Vague, you should talk to people, you shouldn't keep everything held inside. And I was like, where was this theme, like, in the mid-game? I feel like with Vague, they kind of jumped from point A to point C, and they kind of skipped point B, if that makes sense. But, Vague is fine. He's a solid protagonist, but he's definitely not one of my favorites. They could have done more with him. Hilda's pretty good. She had a nice backstory, and, you know, I liked Hilda a good bit. And then am I missing a character? I don't think so. I like them all. They're good characters. Not my favorite Tales of cast, but I definitely enjoyed my time with them. Claire was pretty good. Nothing crazy, but, the Claire and Agarte twist, they could have done a bit better. I think it was a cool twist to have them swap bodies and, like, you play as Agarte and Claire's body and vice versa. I think what they should have done was they should have had more build-up to Vague being like, is this really Claire or is this really Agarte? They had moments of like, oh, Claire, you're really quiet. Is this even her? But I don't know. They could have done it a bit better. It was a cool twist, though. It was also cool to do the perspective swap. Now, the story of the game is pretty good. It's not the best Tales of story ever. I think the story is good. I think where the game suffers, though, is the pacing. I think the pacing in Tales of Rebirth is kind of whack. It's basically a racism story, like, all the way through, and it does well with that. Like, you know, As opposed to like Metaphor ReFantazio or even a bit of Tales of Arise, I think it does pretty good as a racism story. It's kind of just like, oh, Huma and Gajuma hate each other and they need to like overcome their differences. That really is the plot, and that's fine. But I think where the game suffers is the pacing. I think the pacing in Tales of Rebirth is like really kind of whack. Because you have the first act of the game, which I feel like is paced perfectly. I feel like it's like all the way up to saving Claire and going up to Kalgia Castle and like fighting Georgius, like, and learning of the Sacred Beast is all really good. And then the second act of the game is focused on getting the trials, and the trials are cool, and the Sacred Beasts are cool. That's another thing Tales of Rebirth does well. I like the Sacred Beast, and I like the idea of the trials because it gives characters like things to overcome. I thought the trials were well done. The Sacred Beast's inclusion was also really good, but the pacing is like really not that good. Like, you go to a town, you see Huma and Gajuma arguing with each other, and it's like, oh, we gotta find this trial. I feel like the road to getting the trials is kind of bumpy. I don't think the pacing is the best. It just kind of gets like, I guess, repetitive. I don't know how to describe it. Like, part 2 of the game, the second act, gets a little repetitive with like, oh, you go to somewhere and the Huma and Gajuma, like, you know, are expressing their problems of each other, and then you like get a trial. The trials were good, and the Sacred Beast's inclusion was good, but I think the pacing kind of took a dip in that part of the game. And there was a lot of backtracking between other towns, and like, I don't know. And as much as I like the characters, I don't think there was enough being done with the characters or the world that wasn't stated already that was justified in this extra fluff, basically. I just feel like the pacing was kind of weird, because there was so much fluff and there wasn't enough done with the characters or the story and world and lore that we didn't already know, basically. I don't know how to, like, word it, but I think part 2 of the game, while it wasn't bad, I think the pacing could have been much better. And then part 3 of the game feels like it flies. Like, the stuff with the Civil War on our hands and, like, the negative emotions overcoming, that's a really cool idea. But, like, I feel like at that point, it kind of flies. Like, that's where the pacing just gets, like, fast. It also kind of feels like they run out of ideas for the story because Eugene's trial is, like, super half-baked compared to the others. I was starting to feel at the end of the game that maybe Tales of Rebirth, like, was on a time crunch or something, and that's why the end of the game feels so brief. So, that was a little disappointing. That's why pacing's all over the place. You have Act 1, which is paced basically perfect in my mind. Act 2 is, like, kind of padded and has too much fluff, and then Act 3 just feels empty. So, pacing was kind of all over the place. What else do I want to talk about? Ear count 1. Trying to think what else I want to say. The Darkwings were good, best Darkwings in the series. I missed the arena. Apparently it's in the PSP version, but I missed the arena. Hopefully they add it for this fan translation, because I think Lifebottle said they will. I feel like there was something else I wanted to talk about. I don't remember. What was it? Oh, the villains. The villains are pretty good. The villains are nothing special, but like I think they're pretty good. I did like I liked Walto and Melita a good bit, and Sala and Toma, like Sala served his purpose for being the hateable villain, and Zilva was like whatever, didn't really care. So villains were solid. The stuff with Eurus was pretty good. The villains, like, they were serviceable enough. Not my favorite Tales of villains, but they were serviceable enough, and they weren't, like, forgettable. I feel like they got their job done. But yeah. And the music is pretty good. It's kind of classic Tales of Affair, really. But I mean, I think that kind of covers all my points in Tales of Rebirth. I feel like, really, the pacing is, like, probably, like, that's the thing that hurt the game the most. I'm giving this game on backlog, like, 4 stars, maybe 3.5. But, I feel like what hurt Rebirth the most was the pacing. Obviously, the little combat issues I talked about, but I think I was still mostly having fun with the combat, but I think the pacing really hurt the game the most, because Act 2 is, like, it's so repetitive and fluffed, but then Act 3 is, like, so brief, and they could have done more with it, but they just didn't. So, it kind of feels like, I think maybe budget or time investment, maybe both, they go hand in hand. I feel like that got the better of them in the end, because they ran out of ideas and they couldn't really do much in part 3. That's what it felt like, at least. Also, dungeons leave a bit to be desired. There's not many, like, puzzles and gimmicks. The ones they had were neat, but they weren't as good as, like, Symphonia, basically. So, dungeons leave a bit to be desired. The The final boss is like disappointing, but not the worst in the franchise, but it was annoying when he decided to just bring everyone from full to 0. But yeah, I give this game like a 7 out of 10, probably. Tales of Rebirth's a good game. I recommend it. I love the Tales of series, and I have a lot of the Tales of games are like some of the best games I played. So this wouldn't crack like a top 5 Tales of game list, because I definitely don't like this game more than Symphonia, for instance. But it's kind of like, it might be like right outside of it. I feel like I need to NG plus it and get ready to do the post-game dungeon to really know where it stands. But it's definitely a really good Tales game. It is a really good Tales game. I'd recommend it. Like, I'd recommend playing Tales of Rebirth, like, any day of the week. Like, probably don't start with it, because it has a bit of a learning curve to its combat, but play a couple of Tales games, and when you can, play Rebirth, because I think it's a really, really good game. And this fan patch has been really fun, and it's been basically flawless in terms of text and glitches, other than the FMV issue. But yeah, like 7, maybe 8 out of 10. But I'm going to go with a 7. 7 is still a really good time. A 7 out of 10 is a good game. I'd recommend a 7 out of 10 game. But, yeah, so we're not done with the playthrough. We are going to do the post-game dungeon that does exist in Tales of Rebirth. But you can't complete the post-game dungeon, according to Google. I don't know if this is correct, but I'm going to take Google's word for it. You can't complete the post-game dungeon until you finish an NG+. Or get through an NG+. So you can only go through like 40 levels on the first playthrough. So we are going to do the post-game dungeon. We're honestly going to wait a little bit, I think, because I'm still playing through Tales of Graces Remastered, and I'm going to be honest with you, I think playing 2 games of the same franchise concurrently with each other doesn't do well for analytics. Like, I think I started this playthrough back like mid-December, and then Graces came out, and I feel like after Graces came out, like, Tales of Rebirth kind of fell through the shadows, like, fell through the cracks in terms of, like, attention on Twitch. So, I think it's probably going to be best if I just take a break with Tales of Rebirth, because, like, I think I want to finish Graces Remastered, and even after finishing Graces Remastered, I might take a little bit of a break from Tales of, because I can't just play one franchise the whole time. I feel like it doesn't do super well. I think that kind of affected Rebirth's attention a bit, because Graces Remastered came out, and I feel like that overshadows... I feel like Graces Remastered overshadowed Rebirth, like, towards the end of its, time. But we are going to get to it. Probably what's going to happen is, after Graces Remastered, right? Take a small Tales of break. Before moving on to another Tales of playthrough, I'll go back to Rebirth's post-game dungeon. It should only be, like, one stream, or maybe I'll record it for YouTube. I think it depends on what I'm doing at the time. But regardless, after Graces Remastered, we're not going to start another Tales of playthrough until the post-game dungeon's done. I also want to NG plus Rebirth and take my time with it. So, you know, we will get to it, but it'll be a while. It'll be like probably maybe a few months, but I promise I'll get to the post-game dungeon of Tales of Rebirth. I definitely want to try it. But yeah, Tales of Rebirth, the main story is done. It's been a really good time. I enjoyed this game. I have my issues with it, but overall, 7 out of 10. Very good Tales game. I would highly recommend it. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you all next time.